Hello, friends. This is Julie Cohen. I am CEO and executive coach at Work Life Leader. And hello, first off, this is my inaugural LinkedIn Live broadcast. So I want to thank LinkedIn for giving me access to this great technology tool. We're broadcasting live right now on both Facebook and LinkedIn. And wanted to tell you about why I'm doing this. As you can see in the top corner, this is called Work Life Leader Live. And I'm hoping from now on moving forward to be connecting with you and providing you with some hopefully really interesting opportunities to talk about leadership, to talk about careers and our world of work, and to talk about life and how it is impacted by work and leadership. Some might call that work-life balance. Some might call that work-life integration. It's really what matters to you in your world of work. Moving forward, there's going to be a variety of different conversations. Today is Work Life Leader Live Chat. And in a minute or so, I'm going to be introducing my partner in conversation, and we'll be talking about a specific topic. But there's going to be some other types of events also. I'm looking at having a Work Life Leader Live book group where once a month we'll meet to discuss a relevant book to work, life, and leadership. Also, Work Life Leader Live coaching. I will be having conversations, a coaching conversation, and coaching someone in real time so you can see what coaching is and the power of supporting a professional to be more effective personally as a leader and enjoy their work more. So I'm excited that you're here, and I'm looking forward to being on this journey with me. And I will welcome feedback so I know what's valuable to you, whether you're a leader, an individual contributor, an HR professional, or just someone who's really interested in these topics. So we're going to get started, and it's my honor to introduce my partner. I don't think of him as a guest, and I'm not going to think of the people I talk with as guests because we're going to just be having a conversation about a really important topic. So Bill Hyman is a seasoned HR executive and leadership coach who's worked in multiple industries from Fortune 500 and I think even Fortune 50, if I remember correctly, to mid-sized private organizations and nonprofits. His last role was as a CHRO for CDI, which is a leading national professional services firm. He now is which I'm honored to have him as, he's an executive coach with Work Life Leaders. So I get to partner with him where he serves our clients. And he's also an HR consultant serving organizations in need of his HR expertise. So with that, before I bring Bill on, I want to share one of Bill's many claims to fame. And Bill, for over 11 years, was the host of a radio show called Let's Talk Careers. It was broadcast in Philadelphia on the airwaves for hundreds, if not thousands of people to listen to every week. And I had the honor to be on that many years ago. So I feel like this is payback. He gets to be on the first episode of Work Life Leader Live. So I'm bringing in Bill Hyman. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Julie. What an introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I need to let people know about your expertise in broadcasting. So I'm hoping I can live up to the Work Life Leader standards.
I'm sure you will. I'm
honored
to be your very first partner on Work Life Leader Live.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to talk to you. So today's topic, and just so everyone knows, this is the first time I'm doing this. We're not expecting this to be perfect. So I'm learning a new technology. And just like real live work, things don't always go perfectly. So I'm going to ask for your generosity in advance if there's a slip up. Again, hopefully it won't be. But we're talking about today leadership during COVID. And why this topic? Well, considering just about everyone on the planet has been impacted by this, and the world of work, the world of leadership, and all of our lives are different than they were 6 months ago. I've seen from my work with individuals I coach, organizations I work with, HR leaders that I consult with, that everything has changed. No one imagined the scope. And I actually even have been thinking about this as the latest industrial revolution. I know for my career, this is probably the biggest change in work that I've ever experienced. And for many, it is the same. So that's why we're talking about it. And I figured we'd get started by sharing how COVID has impacted us personally. So number one, you can get to know us, and you can also start to see what's going on. But before I turn it over to Bill, I do want to let people know, please comment, ask questions. We will be responding. So as we talk, if there's something you want to either agree with, disagree with, ask questions about, please post in the comment sections. I will be able to see you. I see some folks are here. I see Jill Goldstone is here. I see a LinkedIn user is here who doesn't have a name, who's made a comment. So if you want me to know who you are, make sure you tell me who you are. I'd love to know that you're here, and we're here to answer questions. So Bill, why don't you get started? How has this pandemic impacted you?
Yeah, so professionally, as you mentioned in the introduction, I started my own HR consulting and coaching business pre-COVID. So the biggest change for me professionally is in terms of coaching. I coach people both virtually, like we're doing right now, Julie, as well as in person. So the in-person component obviously has changed, and that has been a big change for me, because depending upon the type of coaching I'm doing, either executive coaching or career transition coaching, having that face-to-face for certain relationships is really, really key. So that's been a big change. The other change is that I also do HR interim assignments. So that has definitely, not currently going on during COVID. On a personal level, it's been pretty cool. So I have two adult daughters, and because of COVID, as of the middle of March, they moved back home. So when I was working in industry, I was traveling a lot, I was away a lot, worked long hours, and unfortunately, I missed a lot of their formative years. Now being home, working from home from mid-March until my oldest daughter returned back to her home in New Jersey, it's been, in some ways, it's been a silver lining for me that we've had such incredible quality time during that period.
That's great.
How about you, Julie?
Yeah, well, I'm going to share mine in a minute, but before I do, we'd love to hear from you if you're watching this live. How has COVID impacted you professionally, as a leader, personally, any of those or all of those? Just put in the chat box and we'll share with people who are watching. We'd love to hear that. Also, if you're watching this right now, if you could use #live or just even in a comment so we know you're there, because some people will be listening to this in our recording. So it's good to know who's here and if this comment is live or if you're watching in a recording. So feel free to use #live if you're listening to this now, so we can respond to you. Okay, so how has COVID affected me? So it's affected me a lot. Before COVID, my business has always been remote. I've been running Julie Cohen Coaching LLC, which is a part of Work Life Leader for it'll be 20 years in November. And so I've always been about 80% virtual coaching, and a lot of the training and group coaching work that I do, it works very well virtually. And so that hasn't changed significantly. I think what has changed from a professional standpoint is, one, I've had to reevaluate how I approach my clients because their focus has changed. So where, I want to do business development or offer them certain services that I've always offered to my audience, I've had to adapt, thinking about what are their needs now. They're very different. Those needs are different now than they were 6 months ago. And so I have to show up differently as a leader in my field, and also as a business developer, as a professional, because I need to be conscientious of how each person is changing. On a personal front, like you said, you have about children. My son was scheduled to start university this year. We were going to be dropping him off this week. He has actually decided to take a gap year because of the uncertainty and the changes that would have happened. So that has impacted what our next year is going to look like, because a traditional gap year where he might have been traveling the world, he's going to be in our house. So that's creating a whole new dynamic. And on the positive side, and I do want to talk about this when we get to this, is that I think there are some positives that have come from this. From a personal side, I have actually been able to focus more on taking care of myself. My business has slowed down somewhat, and it's given me some space to do some things that I have wanted to do both personally and professionally. I've been able to be more creative and spend some more time doing kind of development of some new projects. And personally, I've upped my exercise and healthy eating, which is important to me. Okay, so we'd love to hear if we're just going to take a reintroduction. I'm here. I'm Julie Cohen, and I'm here with Bill Hyman, and we're looking at leadership, our professional lives, and our work lives during COVID.
Hey, Julie.
Yes.
Can I add one other thing in terms of before we transition?
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I know I have, and I'd like to actually compare notes in this area. Well, one of the things that I have experienced, and I've heard this pretty consistently from my clients too, is, and I hate to use sports metaphors, so excuse me for using a sports metaphor, but if you talk to professional athletes, especially football players, they'll say they'll know when they've reached a certain level when the playing field has slowed down. And I have felt over the past number of months that metaphor has worked for me, and also I'm hearing from my clients, is that the world seems to be going much slower. Now, there's other challenges, both good and bad, but because when you said you were focusing more on self-care, that resonated with me, because I think for a lot of people, including myself and my clients, they're really focusing more on other parts of their life, especially self-care.
Right. Yeah. Great. And actually, you saying that, it makes me want to acknowledge something else that just brought up is, and I know this, I'm coming from a place of privilege in that I have, a spouse, and we have a dual income, and we've been able to manage. And because my work is remote, and my husband's work is also remote, he has been able to. We've both been able to maintain pretty much, most of our income and standard of living. And so I do think it's important to acknowledge that privilege that a lot of people, and we can talk about this. Many people are out of work. With looking at what unemployment is, and even just the clients I've worked with, organizations who have furloughed significant amount of people, who have had reductions in force. So, there's a whole other world out there where they don't have that privilege of that you and I are talking about. So I do want to acknowledge that as we continue in, so I just think that's important to talk about. Okay. All right. So with that, I want to just kind of move forward and look at the fallout of kind of what we're seeing in organizations, with individuals, with teams, how working during this period, what's happened. So why don't you start with some things you've noticed from your clients and the organizations you work with? Before you answer, just as a reminder, please tune in. Please comment, any comments and questions. And actually, I'm going to acknowledge some comments, Bill. I don't know if do you see the comments, Bill? Can you see them?
No.
Okay. So again, as I told at the beginning, we're getting used to this technology. So I just want to I see a bunch of folks are here. Lori Slass, you're welcome for saying that. She acknowledged the issue of kind of the privileged place that we're talking about, because we're talking about people who are working and how to navigate COVID, where some people don't have that privilege. And then Jill Goldstone mentioned that she's newly employed after a stretch of 30 plus years, and for her, newly unemployed. And it's exciting for her, and she's looking forward to reinventing work and I'm taking the opportunity to identify what I want to be in this next phase. And so that's really important. Again, what I assume was newly unemployed, that it was not by choice, and she is looking at it as an opportunity. And again, it's fantastic that she has that opportunity. And I want to, if people have questions, how does one make it an opportunity? We can go there too. Okay, Bill, sorry. I just wanted to acknowledge the people who are talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the type of client, the type of individual clients that I work with fall really into two very, in a lot of ways, very separate and distinct type of individuals. One are currently employed, executive coaching, current employed leaders, typically high potential leaders that the organization has identified that they have potential to grow within their current organization. The other clients I work with is very different. These are individuals who've been recently separated from their employer, and the employer is providing career transition, career outplacement services to those individuals. So from the executive leadership perspective, one of the trends that I'm finding is, and this is somewhat unique recently, is that a number of leaders are really questioning, is there more to life? Do I continue doing what I'm doing? Do I continue on this path? Or do I start looking at maybe making a pivot, either within my same company, maybe something a little different, or maybe this is the time to really now looking at what do I want to do for the rest of my career? And I do attribute that not only because this is what they're saying to me, but also in terms of what's not being said, that I think COVID is contributing to that. From a career transition perspective, that's very different. That's where, and I'm really glad you called out the privilege. That's where I'm hearing less privilege, that many of the clients I'm working from career transition, they need that next paycheck, right? And that's a different type of relationship, different type of urgency, different type of fear of the unknown. But the common denominator, I know this is incredibly obvious, but the common denominator is, how do people deal with fear and the unknown and change? And we all know all of us deal with the unknown and change and fear very differently. And I think as coaches, we play a really critical role in terms of helping people challenge some of those assumptions they may be making, and also helping them and providing support and guidance how they work through and manage through that change.
Yeah, and so I think that issue of fear and uncertainty, I think, has profound impact, and I'm seeing it have real-time impact for the individuals that I work with, for groups of talent that I work with, whether they're teams or cohorts of top talent, which is kind of often who I work with, like a select group of leaders within an organization, and organizations as a whole. So that fear and uncertainty that people are feeling individually kind of builds into, how does it affect a working group? How does it affect a team? How does it affect a division, a department, a project? And then what organizations are and aren't doing, because it can kind of integrate. Integrate sounds positive. It's more negative. It can infiltrate. That's the word. Infiltrate into the culture. So that uncertainty can lead to kind of fear, lack of trust. If communication isn't what it needs to be, whether it's from a manager, a senior leader, a senior executive, or organizationally. So I definitely am seeing that. So there's also something that I've seen a lot of, that I find very concerning for people who are in this role, is there's they're in organizations where there have been reductions in force, furloughs, and so there's this fear of, what do I need to do to make sure I'm not next? Right. And so I'm seeing a kind of an intensity of, I have to work more, and I can't drop the ball, and I need to be available 24/7, where previously I wasn't, because if I'm not, perfect, then they're going to find someone else who's better. And if they have to make that decision, they're going to evaluate me. So I'm seeing that actually in multiple organizations at many different levels, which is really concerning for a lot of ways. So are you seeing that kind of thing with some of your?
Well, it's interesting, Julie. I was going to actually, I'm not seeing that in some situations. I'm almost seeing just the opposite. And by that meaning, this has been an interesting, as coaches, we often talk about our role is listening and challenging assumptions. And one of the things that I'm hearing is, so a number of leaders I was coaching pre-COVID, and now I'm coaching them post-COVID. And one of the assumptions I'm hearing pretty consistently from a number of my leaders is work from home. So prior to COVID, there were a number of reasons work from home is not good, both at the organizational level. It's not good for people to work from home. They won't be as productive, and the whole litany of reasons. What I'm experiencing now and hearing from my clients is, look, the assumptions we had pre-COVID have been tested, and in a lot of cases, it's not accurate. Company performance is better, individual performance is better, and as we know, a lot of companies are beginning to rethink, for a number of reasons, once we get through COVID, what is the work setting going to look like? Are we going to allow people to work from home? Are we going to be more liberal? And is this an opportunity to really reduce our footprint within our offices?
Yeah, and so it's interesting. I agree with you. So there's kind of two ends of this continuum, and most people are somewhere in between. This is the working from home is causing greater stress, especially for working parents as we go into the academic year, where they're going to have to balance work commitments with managing children who are at all ages in virtual schooling in a lot of regions of the country. To the other side, again, which is exciting for some of my clients, I have a group of clients who are in New York City. The organization is in New York City. Some of these clients used to have hour-and-a-half commutes each way. And so they're thrilled in that they've found an extra 3 hours where they can actually be more productive an hour or two a day and still have gained back time. So there's, I definitely see it's on that continuum. I think it's that uncertainty of what's next that is really, it can just, create a lot of discomfort. So I have more to say on that, but I want to pause because we got a couple more comments. So Lori Slass mentioned, even though my team was remote before the pandemic, it seems that now with all of life being virtual, remote working seems even more challenging, Zoom fatigue. So, so that's really, each of us relate differently to this new technology that we were, quote unquote, forced to do. Previously we used this voluntarily, to help facilitate, engagement, to, have virtual meetings to save travel costs when you have, global or, dispersed workforces and really used it as a tool. Now it's required. So for some people that doesn't feel good all the time. And part of that is preference. Part of that is your style, whether it's your Myers-Briggs style or your disc type, how you engage. Me personally, I'm using more Zoom now than I did pre-COVID, obviously, like everyone else, but I get energized. I love seeing people. I can talk. So that works for me. But for those of you who that's not your style, that is not going to work. And so from a leadership standpoint and a managerial standpoint, I think being mindful of who the people are on your team or your direct reports and what their needs are. And, again, like Lori talked about, that she's experiencing fatigue. If someone that you work with, check in with them. How is this for you? Might you just want a phone call? I have some clients that, I was like, should we do Zoom? Like, no, phone call. I was like, cool, that's great. So it's really important to know the people around you and their preferences. So thoughts on that? How do you see that showing up?
So I might be reading too much into Lori's question, but I might be hearing an assumption that someone, I don't know if the someone is Lori or the someone is someone else in an organization, has to come up with the solution for how do you continue to be engaged and different ways to be engaged as a leadership team. So, and Julie, you're right. It all depends upon one's leadership style. But when I'm working with my coaches and I hear those type of assumptions, I also encourage them to say, look, the assumption might be you're not the answer person. Your job is perhaps to identify and hear the challenge, but that might be a really good opportunity to throw it out to the team. Look, let's talk about this challenge. How do we stay engaged during COVID? Yes, we were a virtual team before. COVID adds another level of complexity. Let's talk about other ways of engaging. Right now, we're only engaging via Zoom. Are there other ways that we could potentially continue to stay engaged?
Yeah.
And that serves multiple purposes. One, you might come up with a better solution, which I would say you would be, but also by involving others and having that type of conversation, people, just by going through that process, people are going to be that much more engaged.
That's great. So I'm going to just pause for a minute too, because we got a couple questions in, and also as a kind of a reintroduction. So I'm Julie Cohen, CEO of Work Life Leader and an executive coach, and I'm with Bill Hyman, who is one of the executive coaches on the Work Life Leader team, but also an HR consultant and a professional with 20 plus years in HR leadership. And we're talking about leadership during COVID. This is live right now. If you're watching us on Friday, August 28th in the afternoon, Eastern. So please post questions. If you want to use hashtag live, so we know you're there and we can respond to your questions, and or just say hello and say hashtag live. I see a couple folks. Hi, Reed. I haven't seen you for a long time. And we got a great question from John Malinowski. Hi, John. He asked, can Bill and Julie talk about what you believe is the most important leadership behavior during COVID? So I'll start with that. I still want to build on some of the things you talked about, so we might come back around, Bill. But John, it's a great question. And I know you won't be surprised that it's really hard to just pick one leadership behavior. But if you force me, here I'm gonna use a phrase and put two in one. Flexible communication. Being very flexible and adaptable, and making sure you are connecting and communicating with all the people around you, and kind of building on what I said when Lori talked about kind of the change with Zoom fatigue, is understanding that every person that you're working with is experiencing this situation differently. Assumptions cannot be made about even someone who seems happy and engaged in every meeting. You can't make assumptions about what each person is experiencing. And so I would say over communicating is much better than under communicating, and doing it in a flexible way. So John, you forced me, it's flexible communication, or flexible over communication, even in that you're engaging regularly with your direct reports, your team members, your peers, so you understand how you can support and serve them, and that you can address your needs, as well as the people you report to, regardless of what level you are on, in understanding what they need, what the organization needs, and what each person needs, and being available to support them. Some people aren't going to need anything. Some people, this is working just great. Tell them what you need them to do and keep working. And then on the other continuum, some people may be experiencing crisis inside or outside of work, and everyone's on a different continuum. So I would say build more time in to talk. We don't have water cooler moments anymore. We don't have break room moments anymore. And so design those. Again, whether it's through phone or Zoom, or if you're in the same region and you can do a socially distanced walk, whatever that looks like. So that would be mine. Bill, what do you think?
Hard to follow that, Julie. That was really, really good. So when John asked the question, the first thing I thought of was compassion. And Julie, you pretty much touched upon that in your response. And I'm just going to build upon something else you said about the importance of communication. So look, as a leader in general, words matter, but particularly during this time. And I'm going to give an example that happened on the call, right? I mean, Julie and Lori, I think you called out the word privileged. So I made an assumption in an earlier response that I'm talking from a perspective that I do have a privileged lifestyle. But you need to, and Julie, you did talk about this, you need to be really careful the way you communicate that you're compassionate, words do matter, and that you don't make assumptions that others are experiencing COVID the way that you are also. But if you're going to put me into a corner and pick one word from a leadership behavior, I would say during this time of COVID, compassion is particularly key.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, thank you. So we got another comment, and question. I think they can lead us to another path. But before I read it, I'll pause and say this is Work Life Leader Live. I'm Julie Cohen, and we're chatting with Bill Hyman, and we're talking about leadership during COVID. We want your questions. We're probably going to go, I don't know, Bill, do you believe it? We're a half hour in already, and it's gone way fast.
I was waiting for the commercial break.
Yeah, well, this is the commercial break. So we'll keep going. We're definitely going to be off by the top of the hour, but I see there's people here listening, so we will engage. Please ask questions or give feedback or comments. John Malinowski responded. He thought we were spot on. So John, coming from you, actually, that means a lot. So thank you so much. He acknowledged frequent and flexible communication. And he also talked about create resiliency and a psychologically safe work environment. I actually have to comment on that before we get. So that issue of safety, psychological safety, is profound right now. This is where, so to give an example of one organization that I worked with or work with, they're doing really good things to sustain the people that work in their organization, and they had to do a reduction in force. And some of the communications weren't what they could have been. Some of them were really good. And so what I'm seeing, some of the people, they're struggling with, their best friend was let go. Their work husband, their work wife, their work, best friend was let go. Oh my God, why was it me? Why was it not them? And they had no idea, so I don't have any idea. And so that goes back to, the people who, if you have dealt with a reduction in force, the people who are still there are likely in need of that psychological safety, regardless if there was a reduction in force or not. As unemployment numbers continue to rise and everything that's happening politically around here, people are going to be, is my job safe? Is my job safe? Or can I speak up if something isn't right here without fear that I might be on the chopping block? So totally critical. So thank you, John, for bringing that up. So other folks, if you have questions or comments, if you're here live, just let us know. You could put in the chat box, #live, so we know you're here on Friday afternoon Eastern. Reed made a comment. Do you think we can over pivot in our work during these unprecedented times? And Reed, we touched on that somewhat a little earlier. And yes, I think that has to do with kind of that fear mentality where people, if I'm not working hard enough, I might be on the quote unquote chopping block of or the next person who's let go. Also, I think on the flip side, not even from a fear place, I think because it's a lot easier now to blend work and non-work times. Some people really thrived in kind of having boundaries where, okay, I'm working here, I work in my office, when I leave, I don't. Some people are struggling with, okay, I can work all the time and I like my work. And so why not? But it's taking its toll. So I definitely do see that happening. And in order to address that, I think it's really important to be mindful and understand the impact. And I think this is where managers, leaders need to be talking about this is, although the world of work has changed so much, if our expectations for you are consistent, for you to continue doing what you're doing, but they're not, we want our expectations to be reasonable, not unreasonable, that they're having a detrimental impact on how you work and how you live. So I think that's, so Bill, any thoughts to add on to that?
No, there really isn't. I think you pretty much addressed it, Julie.
Well, Lori Slash just mentioned, which I think leads us to kind of a really good place now, is any examples of really good things people are doing that we can share. So what are you seeing with your clients on what's working? I mean, I can share one thing is that organizations are much more, at least again, the organizations and some of the clients that I work with are talking much more about mental health.
Mm.
EAPs, employee assistance programs, organizations are coming to the forefront with these are services available for you as you struggle with stress and worry. I do think I think this is a tricky thing, but I'm seeing some organizations starting to kind of address this, is how to sustain professional development in a time when there's also fear of keeping the proverbial wheels on the bus. So if I put kind of from a business standpoint, for the first 3 months after COVID, I stopped all outreach. I was not trying to sell my services. I was just trying to serve. How can I talk to my clients, even my prospective clients, my former clients? We're all struggling. What skills can I use to support people? What I started seeing is, now we're at the 4-month, 5-month mark. Leaders and professionals are used to not only doing their work, but to be getting developed and having learning opportunities. And so I think there's this conflict that's coming up. How do we keep building and developing and making meaning in people's work while we're trying to stay afloat, which is very tricky. I don't have an answer for that. But I think that's, I think, Lori, one of the really good things is, I know some of the organizations that I worked with, some of the work we were doing was potentially on the chopping block because they weren't sure they could invest in this. So evaluating the importance of taking care of, I'm seeing organizations now elevate the discussion of we need to take care of the people who are here, who we want to lead, and we need to give them the tools, both tactical tools of how do we continue to grow them as leaders, but also the emotional support. So I definitely am seeing that come back. It wasn't here 2 months ago. It's slowly coming back. So Bill, what do you see as some other?
Just to piggyback and to elaborate more. So I'm seeing and hearing some additional things. So organizationally, I think there's some similarities, Julie, in terms of what you're hearing. What I'm hearing is there are certain organizations from a cultural perspective who've really stepped up, that they were a little bit more traditional pre-COVID in terms of work from home, expected people to be at their office during certain hours. And I think through COVID, organizations recognize the work can now be done differently. Performance continues to do well, and that the organization have done a really, really nice job of not only acknowledging the challenges that people are going through, but really validating employees. And for certain organizations, a lot of employees said, I always thought the organization cared about me, but this really has given me additional data evidence to show that I really, it is an organization I'm very happy to work with, and they trust me. Because before I had to be in the office and show them, and the culture was FaceTime. Now it's a different type of culture, and the organization really is focused more on performance. Am I honoring my commitments? And it's less about literally and figuratively being present at work. So that's at the organizational level. On an individual basis, I've heard a number of really positive things as recent as today, where this morning I was coaching a leader, and it was one of his goals to focus more on his personal health. And he said, look, through COVID, since I'm working from home, I have more time to run, more time to focus on my exercise and physical health. And that's been a real benefit for him. Another individual, and I've referenced this earlier, I'm working with a number of clients who really are taking stock of what's best for me in terms of my career, my personal life, and my health. And I see that as real positive coming out of it is pre-COVID, a lot of the clients were on that proverbial hamster wheel. Yeah. Now people are stepping back and taking stock of what's really important to me in life.
Yeah. So interesting. Lori just posted another fear. Leaders who won't make discrete decisions because of uncertainty in the field. So staff are adrift as to what to do. So if we flip that around, Lori and Bill, and anyone else who's listening, around some best practices, Lori was asking some really good things. Again, I think it goes back to that communication. I know I have one organization I'm working with where we've talked about how each manager, regardless of level, they have direct reports, that they're having kind of expectations conversations, checking in more regularly. How are things going? What do you need from me? How can I support you? Here's what I need from you moving forward. But having these more frequently. And they're a little different than just kind of your average one-on-ones, but it's really talking about, instead of the content of one's role, it's talking about how is work going? What do you need as we navigate this? So that is, I think, would it be another really good thing is kind of building on what kind of Lori, the fear you talk about, staff feels adrift as to what to do. Have a space where your direct reports can talk about what they need differently, and what they need now. And it's almost like, I think in some ways we're going to have to get rid of this, pre-COVID, post-COVID, because now it's like we have to design the new ways of work now. And I don't think we make assumptions that it's going to be temporary or it's going to go back to, whatever what we had before. So I do think it's being willing as a manager to get direct feedback or feed forward, which is a term we use at Work Life Leader, direct feedback from the people you work with. And, obviously in the ideal world, Lori, your managers or your executives, your senior leaders would be asking you that also, so you could engage and get more of what you want. Bill, what else?
I'm basically just going to, in some ways, repeat what you said. So, we always laugh about the phrase feedback's a gift, right? And we all have blind spots. So this is an example where if it's internal, often HR, and that was one of the things I absolutely loved when I worked internal to an organization, that HR should be serving as a trusted advisor internal, and that would be the role that HR would play. I'm assuming in Lori's question, that resource may or may not be available. So I agree, Julie, with your answer is that the strategy is how can you provide the necessary feedback to this leader to really create a safe environment, right? And to provide the feedback from the position of the helping him or her in terms of leading the organization. But it does sound like that the first part is how do you engage in a productive conversation around what he or she could be doing to be more effective as a leader.
That's great. So I think we're going to move towards wrapping up. So I want to, I guess, just final thoughts, Bill. What struck you about this conversation, the questions, kind of what came up from, what we addressed?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did not address, but I think it's implicit in all the questions, in a lot of situations, we can draw upon our prior experience. There's either a playbook, we've been there, done there, it sounds familiar, we can share and pass on our knowledge to other people. In some ways, this is an equalizer. We're all in it together, right? None of us have experience, unless you're over 100 years old. But this is, and that's kind of the learning mindset that we really didn't talk about, from a leadership perspective or individual. How can you have a mindset of being inquisitive, to learn, to try to improve, as opposed to maybe being tough on yourself and others and judging and blaming yourself for others? So I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation, Julie, is we're all asking really good questions. We don't necessarily have the answer. And I think we need to be patient with others and patient with ourselves. And I'm speaking as a slight extrovert, but I do think dialogue, communication, conversation can be reaffirming and reassuring as we go through a lot of the unknowns, not only in the past today, and certainly we don't know how much longer we're going to be going through this type of uncertainty.
That's great, Bill. Thank you. So some of the things that I was kind of come to me as we kind of wrap this conversation up. Obviously, we could be talking about this every week, which we, Work Life Leader Live, will be talking about relevant topics to leadership, career effectiveness, career management, and work-life balance, work-life integration, just kind of work life, at least every Friday, and we're going to potentially build in more. But the bottom line for me, I actually wrote down, okay, what can we do as individuals, teams, and organizations? And I think we covered a lot of this. As individuals, I think it's really important to ask for what you need, take good care of yourself, continue to show results. It may not exactly look like it did before, but some areas are going to be more, you're going to be more effective, and some areas you're not. It's about those results. And get support, whether it's from your peers, from your manager. Don't be afraid, or external, whether if you need emotional support, don't be afraid to seek support during this, because this is difficult. For teams, if you're working in teams or you're managing teams, I think more check-ins in general, but sometimes less check-ins. So it's interesting. That one is a continuum. Clear timelines and clear expectations. They should be set and be adaptable. Again, we talked about that issue of flexibility and adaptability. I think is really critical. And for organizations, organizational leadership, build trust, acknowledge the uncertainty, communicate what you know. Don't be silent. Silence, I've seen this across the board, regardless of the level of leadership. Silence breeds anxiety from the people around you. And then last but not least, don't stop developing your people. People, more and more want meaning from their work. And some of that a lot of that has gone away without the interpersonal engagement. And so provide that in whatever way you can. So there we have it. This was the first Work Life Leader Live. For those of you who watched it live, thank you for being here. For those of you who are watching it, the recording of this, please still put your comments in, questions. I'm looking for new topics that you want to have, people you want me to be talking with, and different type of events that will give you information on how to be a more impactful leader, a more effective professional, and a more satisfied human in the world of work. So Bill, I want to thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I definitely am hoping you'll be back on the screen with me in a variety of ways as we move forward. But I'm going to say goodbye to you before I wrap up fully.
Thank you, Julie. And again, the questions were phenomenal. So thank you for all who participated. And Julie, thanks for having me as your very first partner on Work Life Leader Live.
Awesome. Thanks. So everyone, thank you. It was great that you could join us. My hope is we're going to continue this every Friday at noon Eastern, having conversations with different professionals in a variety of work. So if you have guests you want to see, or you want to be on talking with me about something, I welcome that. Also, as I mentioned, I'm looking at having a Work Life Leader book group where I'll be having conversations about a book, and I may have a couple guests with me talking about that book, as well as what I'm calling Work Life Leader Live Coaching. If you want to be coached around a leadership issue, a career issue, a work-life balance or work-life integration, or just a work-life issue, let me know, and we can talk about having you in the live coaching segment. So thank you all, and we'll look forward to when we're live again.